Hi, and welcome to Partners in Progress, a couples podcast about love, life, and well-being in your 20s with me, Elouise.
And me, Sammy.
In this podcast, we'll be discussing topics like relationships, health, well-being, spirituality, and just life. From tips and tricks to failures and falls, all while sharing our story as we try to figure out building and growing a life together in the chaos of modern-day society. We'll be coming to you every Sunday with our shares and invite some guests to share their experiences too. So grab a blanket, a cuppa, and settle in to Partners in Progress. Welcome back to Partners in Progress. So today we are switching roles, and Sam is going to interview me, interview-ish style,
Not
on
professional.
something that we've been kind of wanting to talk about for a while, especially just with everything going on in the world right now, and it's just an important part of my story, I feel like. So we're going to be talking about my journey with bisexuality and being part of the LGBT plus community and what that means for me. And just to start us off, I'll explain that bisexual is basically when you have the capacity to be attracted to two or more genders. It doesn't specify, it doesn't have to be man or woman or anything like that. It's also not to do with your relationship style, so you can be a monogamous bisexual or you can be a polyamorous bisexual or polyamorous straight people. Sexuality and relationship style are two different things, so we're specifically focusing about my experience as a bisexual person. So yeah, of course, as we always say, if there's any questions, this is a topic that is very close to my heart and is a really important part of who I am. So any questions or comments are welcome to go dive into this anymore, but hopefully Sammy will have it covered. I don't even know what the questions are today, but
Going in blind. Just want to find out they're all horrible questions to be asking.
we will see and see how we get on.
Yeah. So the first one I've got written down, looking at my notes on my phone, was when did you first start realising you were bi, and what was that journey like for you?
That's a good starting point.
That's what I thought.
Classic.
Thought you got to start at the beginning and then we'll trek through from there.
So for me, I came out as like bisexual when I was 17 or 18. I know I was in sixth form. I started kind of really honing in on bisexuality as a thing. Not that long before that, really. I was probably literally like turning 17 maybe when I was actually like starting to think about it. And we always laugh at this because part of my very silly young brain was when I was like, you start talking about relationships in school and things like that. I would notice like people being pretty, but I wouldn't really differentiate between like if they're a boy or a girl. But of course my friends were talking about like, oh, that boy, have you got a crush on him and things like that. So I kind of immediately kind of fell into, okay, so boys are the ones you date, and girls are just pretty.
Girls just look very nice.
Yeah, I honestly like, I think it was very like self-aware of my brain, because I think I remember being like early teens and like those kind of like first questions being asked, but I didn't even know the word bisexual really. But I do remember being very self-aware and being like, this is a problem for later me, and proceeding to kind of ignore or even forget about that kind of spark I would have towards like girls as well as boys, like the fact that I wouldn't feel any differently depending on the gender. I just proceeded to just put it on the back burner for like quite a few years.
Not something to deal with right now.
No, it really wasn't. I don't know if it was just because I just didn't think I was ready for it, and like I said, I didn't know what the word is. I just knew that like I would have crushes on boys and girls, but boys were the ones that you dated, so that was that. And yeah, so like I said, I ignored it for a few years, dated like some boys as you do in the classic teenage way. I had like one fairly serious relationship when I was like 15 to 16. It was like a year and a half long.
Just feels like forever at that point.
Yeah, so long. Yeah. And it was only when I kind of like, I don't even know what it was that got me interested in it. Like, I knew if I ever saw like two girls or like two guys on the street like holding hands, you didn't really see it too often, or at least I didn't around where I was. You kind
Mm.
of knew there was like a gay person in a year group, but like it just wasn't.
Yeah, it was
I
kind of the
just,
same at my school, really. It's like there were a few people that you at least thought you knew about, but that was kind of it.
I
Like,
literally don't even like remember there being any in my year group.
mm,
Well, there was one actually that was in our friendship group, but yeah, like I think they were the only one that I knew of, and I only knew of them because they'd told me. It wasn't like common knowledge across the
no.
year group. Um, but yeah, so I kind of just started like rabbit hole down a lot of like YouTuber life, and I really was obsessed, and I still am obsessed with Rose and Rosie, who are this incredible, beautiful couple, and they have kids now and just great life. And they've been YouTubers forever. I mean, to be fair, in the like lesbian YouTuber community, there's so much drama. There's always been so much drama, and I think honestly, they're the only surviving couple.
Gosh. So
Um,
they're the only one you can really track anyway at this point.
yeah, literally, and yeah, and you know, as the algorithm works, like you find one and then you find
Yeah, more and more just
more.
kind of grow, or at least what you're shown and you discover grows. So,
Yeah, and when there was like a couple of them, I think it was Rosie from Rose and Rosie and Dodie,
mm,
talking. Oh, I love Dodie. Talking about their like bisexuality and what that means, and their like kind of feelings, and how they kind of knew that they might be bi and stuff growing up. And I was relating like literally like to a lot of their experiences of like the way I would feel, and kind of things like that. So, um, yeah, I was very fortunate in like it didn't feel like a really scary thing for me. I kind of
mm,
like I kind of was able to figure out my sexuality privately, and I didn't tell anyone. Um, I was kind of able, yeah, just to kind of privately look it up and research, and I came across the old reliable Kinsey scale, which is basically a like scale of like gayness pretty much, and I literally ranked 50-50. Uh
like right dead in the middle.
which
Just,
isn't actually super common with like bisexual people. Like there's so
mm,
many variations of a bi person, like they might have different there's so many different ways that you can be bi. Like it doesn't necessarily mean that you feel the exact same way as towards multiple genders. You might feel like you want to date um one, or and then only like sleep with the other and things like that.
mm,
So there's so much kind of, variations within it, that I was so 50-50. It was quite funny. And it was yeah, it was as it was kind of one of those things where as I was answering the questions, it was really obvious, because I would be like, "Oh, I imagine kissing a boy. I imagine kissing a girl." And I'd be like, "Yeah, yeah, 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 yeah." And I was, it's one of those things like I know I'm like answering these questions, but I know.
yeah, it's like in your heart, you already kind of know what the answer is going to be. It's just almost
Yeah.
filling out as a formality at that point, I guess, of just like, well,
Yeah,
might as well just keep going through
exactly.
it and see what it says anyway if it surprises you. But
Yeah, and
yeah.
then when I was kind of coming close to deciding that bisexual was the kind of right label for me, I was actually chatting with um, someone I knew from school production who is gay, and um, she was probably like the first person I technically told. I was just
Oh,
like, oh, I think I might be like because she was the one that recommended like a lot of the YouTubers and stuff. Like I was kind of
oh,
saying
nice.
like I was trying to figure out what label, or like I was trying to figure out that I might not be fully straight. And she was like, "Yep, this is a really good YouTuber to listen to. This is a good one to watch. This is, she kind of helped start me off on that journey, and that was really helpful. So yeah, that was kind of how I discovered my bisexuality.
Oh. No, it's nice to kind of hear about that journey, because some of it's new for me as well. It's like I know bits and pieces of it, but it's interesting hearing about like where you've kind of got these bits and pieces. Like
Yeah.
again with the YouTubers, hearing that you've heard from that from someone that you knew, and things like that. So it's very interesting.
Mm.
So yeah, following on from that, kind of the next question I've got written down is: was there anything that made you decide to come out when you did, and were there any specific moments from that kind of journey that you remember really clearly or stick in your mind for positive, hopefully, or less positive reasons, if you want to talk about that?
Yeah, well, I feel like I should have put like a trigger warning at the beginning, so I might go back and add a trigger
We
warning
can
at the beginning.
retroactively
It's
record
not
something
like I
otherwise.
had a massively like negative experience, but there are obviously some mentions of things. I'll put it in like the caption as well. Anyway, I didn't have to come out, but the said girl that gave me like the recommendations and was really like quite supportive was the first girl I dated. Finds the only
It
gay
all
in the
ties
school
together
and
dates them.
But yeah, so, and I remember this is what they've talked about, like like memories of like sticking out, and there's quite a few that I'll try and go over, which you know all about, to be
I was
fair.
going to say this bit, I was kind of might know most of the answers, but it's still interesting.
Yeah, but it's so I knew that I would probably like come out, like I was quite nervous about like I was nervous about how my dad would react, and I was nervous about how like kind of like grandparents and kind of further family members like that might react. I was not really that worried about my friends in terms of actually that's probably inaccurate, because the biggest thing that I was worried about is that they would change how they acted around me.
Right.
So I knew that they'd accept me, and I knew that they'd be like, yeah, that's fine. But I worried that they might feel uncomfortable having sleepovers with me, uncomfortable talking about certain things with me. They'd start worrying that I was gonna like fall in love with them,
Right.
and I was just so worried that it was just gonna completely mess up all these friendships and relationships that I had. That was my biggest like fear with it all. I didn't really expect any biphobia, which I did end up unfortunately experiencing,
Yeah.
but not from the people that love me, not from the people that care about me, really. There was uneducated comments
Yeah.
from like people, but for the most part people were quite understanding about it. But yeah, the first like time when I was like, I'm gonna have to properly come out, was because I had arranged this, well, the said girl asked me on a date. And it was actually, it's funny enough we're timing this now, because it was actually on Valentine's Day, and I hadn't actually clocked it was Valentine's Day because I don't celebrate. And my mum was the one that drove us to the cinema, and it was like a rom-com, and the girl gave me like a chocolate rose.
All very subtle hints as to the fact it might be a date.
My mum didn't say a word, bless her heart.
Oh, do you
She
think
was
that she might have
she had an
had an
inkling. She's
inkling at
told
that
me
point?
since then. She was
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
I was a bit intrigued why you were going out on Valentine's Day with this girl that looked quite, because she looked quite what you'd call like a butch lesbian, in terms of she had like short hair and just her kind of more like mask clothing, or and can't say androgynous
Yeah.
clothing. So it was kind of,
I guess that might give extra hints towards it as well from her perspective.
yeah, it was a little bit
Yeah.
like so that was when I kind of knew that like, oh, I might have to open up about this eventually. And it was kind of like before that point I kind of knew that I would be, but in that moment I didn't think of it as big a deal at the time. Like looking back, I'm like, oh my God, that's so obvious.
Yeah, but it's when you're in it, I guess you're like, oh no, people might not figure out
I
if
was like, oh, it's just friend, it's just friend, just friend.
nibbling away in the chocolate rose.
Yeah, in this little box.
No.
But yeah, so I think that was when things got a little bit more difficult for me, was when I had decided on using the label bisexual for me. But my friends didn't know, and like the people around me didn't know, because
Yeah.
they obviously, these are like my best people, these are my people that I love, and they know all of me,
Mm.
but they didn't know this important fact about
Yeah,
me.
it's
And
obviously a huge part of who you are as well.
yeah,
So
and suddenly it just felt like that was significant, but at the same time, that fear of like they're going to change how they react around me was rising just as much. And it's funny because I'm thinking now the second person that I told was the friend I was talking about, the one that the only other like LGBT plus person in my year group that I knew of
right.
at the time, was the second person I told, and that was a drunken, like kind of I had been drinking a little bit, and I was just feeling, when you like get sad when you're drunk, sad
Yeah,
drunk.
yeah. Not every time, but yes, I did know what you're talking about.
I took myself to the like the laundry room, and I was just sat on the floor, all
Laundry room
sad.
conversations are always the sad ones. I feel like that's kind of a trend.
And I just taken myself away from it, and then this person came up to me and was like, "Are you all right?" And I was like, "Well."
Where do I start?
Yeah. So yeah, and then gradually I kind of started telling more people, some of them more experienced. Unfortunately, there were several instances of friends outing me
Mm,
before I was ready, and also incorrectly outing me. There was one occasion where someone announced to the whole table, "Oh, don't you know she's a lesbian now?"
right.
Um,
It's like A, no,
yeah,
and
but
B,
I
don't do
think
it.
it's because in their mind it wasn't that big a deal. Like it wasn't.
Right, okay.
Was because they were just so accepting. They were just like, it's fine, and we were around people that like it wasn't like it was a group of strangers. It was like people
No.
like we kind of knew.
So it's not like bad intent, but still, it's like
But it was just an accidental, real loud
yeah,
announcement, and I was like, no, like that's not what I am.
yeah.
And I had very various reactions. My friend Danny and Kirsty, that both of their reactions just make me chuckle to this day, because Kirsty Kirsty had been told by someone, but that the rest of my friendship group at the time didn't know, and so she kept saying things like, "Oh, bye, see you later," and just laughing. And I was
I think
like,
told me this before,
Kirsty,
yeah.
no.
Just
But I
chuckling
was
to herself.
chuckling as well.
She's just got an
So,
infectious laugh about her as well, to be fair.
the best laugh.
Doesn't help with that specific instance. Try to
And
keep it quiet.
she's my very best friend, like now as well. Like she has been this whole time. But I knew after she was reacting that way, I was like, there's no chance I'm going to be able to keep this hidden from our friends for much longer.
No.
But again, it was a safe group to come out to. And then Danny, and I literally remember this so engraved in my head. We were all walking. We had gone round Danny's house, and that was when I had decided I was going to tell them that day, and I was really off like the whole time we were all hanging out.
Oh, what, like kind of nervous or just in your head about saying
Yeah,
it? Yeah,
I
yeah.
was. My heart was like hammering. And I kept, there kept being little opportunities to say it, and I just didn't. And so it wasn't until we were walking home, and I was like, oh God, like if I don't say it now,
I'm not going to have a chance to say
it's
it.
not,
So,
it's
yeah.
the opportunity's gone. I have to say it now. And that always kind of prompted me. And so that was when I told my friends, and one of my friends, I was like, oh, so I've got something to tell you kind of about me. Just, I don't want it to change how you react around me though. And she was like, oh, are you a lesbian now? And I was like, oh, not quite. And then I explained that I was bi. And then Danny literally went, oh, we finally got a gay one in the group. And he was like, oh my God, we can check out girls together now.
Wholesome times with that.
Oh,
no. But
honestly, that was the best, because that
sweet.
just broke the stress of it completely.
Yeah, it's good. He's very good at relieving the tension in situations
Yeah,
like that. So
exactly.
it's really sweet.
So I'm really, that just made me chuckle as well. Like they were just really, loving and accepting.
But yeah, I think I had one other bit around sort of the coming out and that. And was like, was it generally kind of what you expected with like what you envisioned of like coming out to be like when you're actually doing it, and like why or why not? I appreciate you. It's just like one thing you said to me before is like you kind of come out every day, and especially at the beginning.
Yeah.
I appreciate it's not really like a blanket answer you can give on that, but
No, well, I mean, I've had a lot of reactions, and I didn't expect to have the classic negative reaction that I did, where there was someone who used some very bad stereotypes towards bisexual, and the fact that they're greedy, they can't be trusted, um, that they're just not good people. And having someone who we hadn't really had a relationship, but we'd had a situationship. And it was like one of those things that it could have, but at the time we'd already gone past that. But the fact his reaction was that harsh really did hurt me. And I've had like that thing of like being on dating apps, and both men and women having negative reactions, refusing to date a bi person because
right.
they think that you're going to turn around one day and want to date the other
The opposite,
gender.
yeah.
And just being like, oh, the bisexuals I've dated have always been like this, da 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 da, which has been unfortunate.
Yeah.
But the likes of people like Kirsty and just like all my other friends, like Danny's ridiculous reaction,
Yeah.
it was nice. It's always weird. Like, you get so many varying reactions, and sometimes it's awkward because when you come out, normally you almost have to reassure the other person, like,
Yeah.
because they're hurriedly trying to like not make a big deal of it, but also make sure they say the right thing and do the right thing, and not offend. And so a lot of people end up just like being very like flustered and like
Yeah.
to
Yeah, it's kind
you.
of melt into a weird puddle.
And so you're like, it's fine. And I always say to people,
Yeah.
like, if you have any questions about it, something that I'm eager to talk about, because I think those conversations need to happen.
Yeah.
Because I do believe people should be educated and respectful. And also some people aren't open to questions, and and get forced to prove themselves or
Yeah.
explain themselves when they don't want to do that. So I kind of almost like trying to
Buffer
do
other
my
people from
bit,
it.
yeah,
Yeah.
of like the LGBT plus community. I'm like trying to like mother them by being like, I'll explain.
Yeah, to save anyway. But
So
I
that
also could
if
point
you
them to this
don't want
podcast now as
to,
well. So
yeah. So if
but
you
no.
don't want to talk about it, you don't have to.
Yeah.
But I also do encourage people to do their own research, because it's not on the LGBT
No.
plus community to educate you. Like, you should just be educated, and you, even if you're not educated, there's a general human decency or human respect that should be expected,
I was gonna
in
say,
my
you can just be
opinion.
nice, even if you don't know as much about it,
Understand.
or like, yeah, it's that's kind of the bare minimum for anything, really.
Yeah.
Um,
But yeah, it's definitely, and it's interesting in terms of like how you said like, oh, you come out every day, because it's almost like when you're dating someone who's like the same gender as you, I feel like you're constantly coming out, because it's always like, oh, my girlfriend, this, and they're like, wait, you're gay, or things like that.
yeah,
But because I say, well, we've kind of, this is something we've agreed to, isn't it? Because obviously you are a man, so we look like a straight passing relationship, even though I
yeah,
am still bisexual regardless of my relationship status.
yeah,
So I don't get forced to come out anymore, but I choose to come out when I can, because I think it is incredibly important that that part of my identity is not hidden or put down because of who I'm dating, because that's what bisexual is being open to dating like different genders.
yeah.
And that just because that I happen to be looking like a straight couple doesn't mean like I am suddenly straight.
No, exactly. It's still an important part of who you are, and it's the same thing. Like, I never want to stop you from like expressing that part of yourself as well, because I know how important it is to you.
Yeah, so I always use the term like partner, and helpfully enough, your name is also gender neutral.
That's
So
true.
I could say Sammy and my partner, and it means that people don't immediately assume, not because I'm not proud of who I'm dating, but because I don't want them to assume that I'm straight because you are a man and I'm a woman.
Yeah.
And that's something we've agreed to. That's a consensual thing, isn't it?
Yeah, no, that's something we talked about, and I do the same thing referring to you as my partner as well.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
it's a two-way street in that
Yeah,
regard.
and I also just think it's a good word, like
Yeah.
partner. I feel like boyfriend doesn't quite do it justice. I
Yeah.
feel like boyfriend feels very like school age, doesn't it?
Yeah, partner's more like you're two,
Adults.
I was going to say two cowboys or cowgirls out riding side by side through life.
Yeah.
Or you're one. So, but no, I do agree. It does feel like it's the good, like, more adult version for like when you're later in life and actually like, because I feel like it's more like you are partners in what you do. Like again, in like getting a house or living somewhere and having cats or children or whatever you have, you know, if you're not
Yeah.
like married or like have some partnership in another way, then I feel like partner is a good way to describe that type of relationship. So that's why I like using it anyway. Obviously for all the reasons we talked about in regards to being bisexual, but
yeah, I mean, I agree with like those reasons as well. It's not like the only reason I do, but I do feel like it helps me. And like I always have a pride badge and a bisexual badge on my lanyard for my play work.
yeah,
And you know, I'm quite open to the young people that I work with because I think those conversations are helpful. And also like there's a lot of children and young people that are figuring out their sexuality or their gender during that time, and I want to be a safe person they can come to. And that's why like
yeah,
that's why I feel like it's important to talk about it here, and it's important to talk about it with people, even if at the end of the day, no matter like whatever conversation or whoever I'm speaking to, there's always going to be a risk that they react negatively. And
yeah,
so I will always be stressed and a little bit worried with, and obviously like coming onto this podcast today and talking about it today, like it's something that like makes me a little bit nervous because you don't know what your response is, and you know this is quite public, it's going to be out there and you don't know who's listening.
yeah,
But
exactly.
I've been open on my like social media and my belief that it is important that people firstly know that that's an important part of who I am, but also that we need to be kind to each other in this world, regardless of who we love or who we are, what gender we most relate to, or if any. Like I think being LGBT plus should be more respected and a comfortable conversation that's not questioned about what rights we deserve to have and things like that.
Yeah,
I think it's important. So although it is nerve-wracking to be open and talk about these things, I also think it's really important. And because I know that there might be one listener or there might be one kid that I encounter at work that feels safer and like they have a better sense of belonging because I'm out here living my very proud bisexual and in a relationship life, you know,
yeah,
like I want to own that that's part of me. And I always feel really weird if people know me but don't know that about me. So I quite quickly will like mention it when I can.
yeah.
But every time I get like super sweaty. Like my
It's
heart
like
goes
we'll need
really
a shower
fast.
afterwards, but yeah,
Because you just don't know. I mean, I've
no,
been very lucky that I haven't had like someone face to face picking me apart and being biphobic towards me, but I've been very like indirectly affected, whether that's like people on like messages being biphobic, or people talking about me and making biphobic
mm,
comments, um and like people preaching about that there's only man and woman relationships in the streets. Like I've had those experiences as well, but I'm very lucky that I haven't had really overt violent comments directed at me face to face. But I know that from your face, I know that you're thinking you shouldn't be lucky that that's the
yeah.
situation.
I think it's just from my perspective, it's like any like none of it should be happening to any extent. But so at the same time, I understand what you mean, because you're talking about like what the worst case thing would be, and in a sense, obviously, it is lucky that you haven't had that. But I don't know, you shouldn't have to deal with any of it, and I think that's just what really frustrates and upsets me about it all.
You're a very good ally.
Thank you. I try my best. But no, I think it's just one of those where, obviously, because it means so much to you, by extension, is always going to mean a lot to me. And I just always want the best for you and anyone who's out there in any of similar boat, whatever that may look like.
Yeah. And in all seriousness, like, when it comes to our relationship, I told you on day one, didn't
Day zero, really.
I told you, I am bisexual. This is a part of me. Are you okay with that? And we had a conversation about it, didn't we?
Yeah.
And you've always, and I joke, you've been a good ally, but you genuinely have been a good ally. And I think allies like you are so, so important.
Yeah.
You know, you'll come to Pride events with me and you'll feel it, like just empathetically, you will feel the heaviness and difficulty that our community faces. And it kind of, I like to say that you're in that community as well, because you're dating a bisexual woman, and you care so deeply about our rights and our experiences.
Yeah.
And if there's ever like a topic that you feel like you're not educated in, you make an effort to make sure that you are.
Yeah, and I feel like it's important to have those conversations, because while it obviously doesn't directly affect me, it affects you, who's someone I care about a lot. But even if I wasn't dating you, for example, it's still something I'd care deeply about, because it affects a lot of people who haven't, it's not anything wrong, you know, they're still being treated as if it is. And I think that's just not fair in any extent, when there's so many other things that are happening that's so much more important to actually focus on and pick apart, that's been dedicated to this, which is, there's literally zero reason for it.
Yeah. I'll ask a question to you now in terms of...
Flips it around.
I know.
Still
just
got half a list
sneaky at
left.
the end.
But no,
Have you got more questions?
I do have more questions, yeah.
Oh, no.
Only us three, but I made a longer list, so we don't have to run through all of them. We can do like the Sweden one. We can do a part 2 at some point.
We'll have to do a
because
part
we're
2.
running fairly close to our finishing time anyway.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you, like, kind of just about what we're talking about, really, in terms of like, what do you feel has been your experience of being in a serious relationship with a bisexual woman?
I think it's felt like it's such a cool part of our relationship to me as well, really. Like, there's not really it's one of those things that's always like in my head, of like, when people are like, oh, if you're describing a relationship, it's one of the first things I bring up, really. And I think it just feels so integral to us. But also, I do feel weird in a sense that, like, not everyone that sees us out and about is going to know it. And again, it's the same way you described, because it's like being a straight passing relationship on the street. People just look at us and be like, oh, look at those 2 straight people. I don't think they'll probably think that explicitly, but subconsciously, that's what they're going to be looking at. And again, there's not like you should have to go around, or that we should have to go around wearing a big badge explaining our exact relationship status. But it always feels weird when, like, people don't know that about us, and mainly about you, but it is us as well. So yeah, so it's one of those things that's like, it just feels really integral to me, and I kind of mention it, however directly or indirectly, to my friends or my family when I was telling them about you, like when our relationship kind of began. And it's like, especially just from day one, it's like I wanted people to know that that's what our relationship is as well, you know, just because I feel like it's important.
And you asked me as well, just to clarify that as well.
Oh,
that's
yeah, no, I'm not
You're
asking you left, right, and
yeah.
so no, it's from what you've said.
I remember you asking me, like, is it okay that I tell people, like, would you want me to tell people? I remember us having that conversation really early on. So yeah, you telling you, because I think you obviously deeply respect the fact that that's a part of who I am, and you know that I am quite eager to be out and proud.
Yeah.
So you make a point of doing that as well. And also because I feel like we both agree that it's like a part of who I am, like such a key part of who I am, like a pillar of Elouise.
Yeah. That's
that it feels almost weird if people don't know.
Yeah, because I think, again, it's like, it was definitely important to mention that before people are like, don't just go around saying that.
Yeah, what are you just outing her for?
I know. But yeah, I think, again, if it was one of those where you said like, oh, it's not as important of a thing to mention, because again, it's like obviously mean different things to different people, and if that's the case, that's also completely fair. But yeah, I think just for you, it is one of like the big. I always think you can not sum up people, but like there's always like a big 3 or 5 things about people. I think we kind of talked about it in our first episode, really, but I think that is one of yours, at least from how I view. You can always say incorrect buzzer sound and say something else, but yeah. Do you want me to keep going? I mean, I feel like we've kind of reached a natural stopping point in my questions, because I have more, but that's more about being bi in general than any specific experience, and I feel like we might have covered quite a lot of that in what we talked about today already. So
yeah, so we'll do a part 2, just as we
can do a
will
part 2.
do for Sweden.
End up being 10 parts for both of them. That's right.
I know. Well, why not? It's our podcast and do
That's
what I want. So before we sign off, we'll go into the Wellbeing segment and ask what has been a joy or highlight of your last week.
Oh, there's been quite a few actually. I'm going to go with one that I feel like is going to be more specific to me, because I feel like last time when I've done it, you've been like, oh, that was going to be my one. So I'm going to say something that hopefully shouldn't be yours. So something that's really been kind of joyful for me last week is just kind of gaming, really. It's been a big thing that's happened this last week. I finished one of the games I've been playing for a while and started a new one, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, for anyone interested. No spoilers, please. But really enjoying it so far, and it just feels like a whole massive new experience that I'm very excited to get started with. So I think that's just been a nice thing to do between a lot of other things that I feel like you might mention as yours. I don't know, could be completely wrong.
I was going to say, which is also quite tied into this episode, is the bookmail of today. Well, of the last couple of days. It's a pretty simple thing today. But it is the second book of Piper CJ's No Other Gods series. And she is a bisexual author. My favourite author. And we have been waiting a while for this book to arrive, for the book 2 of I think 4.
Oh my god, I thought it was 3. Oh god, a good week.
Normally it's 4, but I might be wrong. I don't know. I feel like it might be 4. Anyway, however many books it is, I hope it's a million.
You say that and then you're waiting for a year between each one. You're like, I want it now.
Yeah, but yeah. So I like on my birthday, I like pre-ordered like 3 books, which are all like follow-ons from series that I'm reading. And my niche is quite specific in terms of I really love fantasy, and particularly LGBT plus fantasy, because that's the representation that I never had growing up. Which would be a good question, actually, think about it for next time.
That was one of my questions, kind of, was like, what's your favourite representation of I didn't really know how to say a word, bisexualism. I don't know what the word is.
That's a good word. I like that word.
In like media and literature or whatever. So
no spoilers. We'll
no
answer
spoilers.
that one
but
next
yeah,
time.
anyway, I'm saying we're on the same wavelength. That's all I wanted to say.
We are wavy.
It's different.
Anyway, so that was just a really exciting thing to arrive. But I have really also enjoyed the gaming and just spending time together between all the productivity of the week.
Yes.
And then what is something that you can do for your well-being, or I could do to support your well-being in this following week?
Dedicate time to more gaming. I think
Very
is my
wise.
word in short. Yeah, I think just spending time to focus on that between all the other house and garden-y focus bits that we've been doing. Just keep the balance, really, because it's easy to focus all on one or all on the other, but I think balance is a good thing to strike. More wise quotes at 7. What about you?
I think my main thing is, because it's half term here at the moment when we're recording this, so I have slightly less sessions this week. I've got 2 at the end of the week, and then we're off to my parents overnight, which I'm very excited about. But I am because spring is on its way, I'm so eager to get so much of the garden done, and also make sure the house is all good for our cat sitter to arrive at the end of the week and all these things. So I'm just trying to be really intentional with not overdoing it, because I have slightly overdone it in a few days recently, and I keep
Slightly.
doing like a load of things on my list that's planned to do over a few days in like one day. So just trying to, I think I just need to kind of,
Strike the balance.
yeah, but I think there's something you can actually support with is just like kind of reassuring me when I'm resting that resting is good.
Resting is good.
Thank you.
There we go.
The job is done.
Take that one for the day. No.
And on that note, we will leave you to digest. But do leave. This is a topic I'm so passionate about. So do leave any questions or comments, whether that's on the comments of the videos or like privately message to us. That's absolutely fine. We've also got an email address as well. As we talk about the second part of this, and also on the Swedish stuff, if that'll be kind of, I don't know when we're doing that, but that's another one to do again. So
Yeah.
bring it up. Yeah, and we're sending you lots of love and warmth, and we will see you next time.
Bye-bye.